Well, with that, we
I
will
love that.
welcome Mr. Sam Husseini. Welcome, sir. How are you today?
Good to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. I'm Lila. This is Pat. We know we don't have you for very long, so thank you. There's a lot going on in the news right now. We know you wanted to address Vote Pact, but is that how you wanted to start? Because you want to talk about the terrorist attacks on Lebanon with the pagers, or how do you want to
I'd really
begin?
like to just talk about Vote Pact because it's something that every one of your listeners can do.
Okay.
Um, you know, I, you know, I feel like when I am able to get into the State Department and ask a tough question like that, I'm like really giving it my all. And I'm asking your listeners to give it their all with this idea that I have that literally anyone can start this movement. I've come up with this idea. I think it's probably my best idea,
Good one.
but it hasn't taken off, and it should, and it's long overdue. And the idea, as outlined at votepact.org, is we're in this jam, and we're having problem after problem and crisis after crisis and major crime and calamity after calamity because people are caught in this duopoly.
Right.
And most of there's going to be like a few percentage of people that try to break out of the system on their own, but that's a hard thing to ask most people to do.
Right.
They're stuck choosing their lesser evil, or they've totally checked out and they
Right.
said, "This is all baloney. Politics is a scam. I'm out of here, and I'm just gonna live my life."
Yeah.
Which there's something to be said for that. Um, the idea of Vote Pact is to get people to pair up, a would-be Trump voter and a would-be Harris voter, pair up and both vote for third parties of their choice. Um, an enterprising third party or independent candidate could use this to achieve literal electoral victory by pairing people up. And this is something that if the first pairings are the hardest, I'm sure.
Right.
But once there are some pairings and people have an example, and then it can spread. It can spread organically, and then it could spread by once some celebrities start doing it,
Right.
that it becomes a massive force. And this is something that people have continuously talked about, a realignment of U.S. politics, but it
Right.
doesn't happen because, especially in election years, everybody is programmed to go to their lesser evil and go back
Right.
into their corners, even if they were sort of drifting off of the reservation for a while. Um, the fear and the hatred take over,
Yeah.
and there's a way out of the fear and the hatred. And you know, there have been projects that I've done, like the invoking the Genocide Convention. um, that was kind of Francis Boyle's idea.
Could you
Really,
explain to us what you're saying when you say invoking the genocide?
like South Africa eventually invoked the Genocide Convention at the International Court of Justice against Israel. That was
Right.
basically the brainchild of Francis Boyle, law professor at the University of Illinois, fairly
Right.
radical, but very stringently legal law
Yeah.
professor. He basically came up with the idea, and I basically pounded the pavement for months and months and months.
I didn't realize you had been such a big part of it. That's amazing. Yes.
Oh yeah. And eventually South Africa did it. Eventually, I mean, I still don't know all the roots, but I know Craig Murray wrote
Right.
about it because I pushed him on it, and then his writings landed in South Africa, and that apparently is part of what triggered it. Um, so I feel like I was sort of, you know,
Yeah.
I was sort of,
Instrumental.
I was sort of Neo to Francis Boyle's Morpheus.
I love
All
it.
right. All right. Well, here I'm Morpheus, but I have not been able to make this take off. But I think it's my best idea, and because it can implode the duopoly, so it transforms the entire political landscape if it takes off.
Right. So there
Um,
needs to be
Well,
like
so
a
many people are.
registry that people sign up for and then a way to issue receipts for your vote. Because wouldn't it be horrible if, everybody who's voting Jill Stein is paired up with somebody who's voting for the Libertarian and then they actually vote for Trump and then the Jill Stein voters get blamed more, right? So,
right.
yeah.
You're right. Trust is a real issue here. I've generally advocated for people to try to do this with somebody in their life,
Right.
somebody, a relative, perhaps somebody that you know, but you avoid talking politics with
Right.
because, you disagree.
Yeah.
Um,
For me, they're all Kamala Harris voters.
I understand that. Um, I mean, if somebody is committed, that you're already not going to vote for either Trump or Harris, this doesn't directly apply to you, but you can be the catalyst
Yeah.
for all of these other people, particularly
Yeah.
people who are coming to you, if they're trying to talk you out, into your senses to say, oh,
Right.
God,
Right.
then you flip the script on them and say, you don't think that I should vote for Jill Stein because you're afraid that that helps Trump, but
Right.
you agree that Jill Stein is probably better on the issues, right?
Right.
And if they say yes, which they probably will, then you say, okay, so the only reason you're voting for Harris is because you don't want Trump, right? Right.
Right.
Well, then you challenge them and maybe you try to pair them up with somebody who's the opposite of
It's a
that, who
great idea.
sees Trump as their lesser evil. And ideally, it's somebody that you have a personal relationship with so that, trust isn't much of an issue.
Right. Right.
Um, there is a web page called breaktheduopoly.com,
Okay. Right.
which is pairing people up.
Okay.
And I don't run that, but I've talked to the guy who does, and he seems like a sincere guy. And so I would point people to that if they need to to go to that. Um, but this is central, and it's something that anyone and everyone can do, and it could spark a real
Absolutely.
complete uprising.
Yeah.
And as
Well,
the
you're giving
pressure,
people
yeah, go ahead.
well, you're giving people the first chance to vote for somebody instead of voting against somebody. For a lot of people, they're stuck in having to vote against the bad guy on the other side. And so
Right.
when you cancel them out, hey, now who do you pick? Who would you really pick for president is what you're saying. And let's cast that vote, make that happen.
Exactly. Because people have become alienated from themselves, from their own opinions.
Yes.
They are not true to themselves, and the
Absolutely.
political forces push that on them. One of the most recent pieces I wrote at votepact.org is even about these so-called public opinion polls. They're not public opinion polls. They don't ask people, who do you want to be president?
Right.
They put them in the same box. They say, if the election were held today, which of the following would you vote for? And half the time they don't even list anybody but
Right.
Harris or Trump. But even when they do, they're still putting them in that box.
Right.
And I put forward, wording that would really get at getting people's beliefs. I mean, the best wording that I can come with to really get what people want is to say there's a four-way tie between Harris, Trump, Jill Stein of the Green
So their
Party,
vote matters for the
all.
first time.
You are the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Who do you vote for? That empowers the voter, and that's what the punditocracy and the big pollsters and the big media don't want.
They absolutely don't. Everything is the horse race. And it's funny, they were so kind to Kamala at the beginning. And then I've seen like corporate media are now sort of starting to call her out on things. And I think Pat had mentioned this about a month ago, but like they want that horse race. So now they're going to start calling her out on her flip-flopping or not answering questions or her vapid responses. No, you're absolutely right on that. And it alleviates the guilt also because Democrats have done a really good job. And I mean, we can't stand Trump here, but of making him like the ultimate boogeyman. And that onus on people feels really heavy. And this would take that off.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the mainstream media and the establishment follow a script that I think is insidious and ultimately designed to undermine democracy. I'm quite convinced that they didn't call Biden on his age thing so that there wouldn't be primaries in the Democratic.
100%. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
And I wrote a couple of pieces on that, in real time as it was happening.
Right.
And if you look at the timeline, this is the first year that they ever had a debate before the conventions. They never do that. They only did that to get rid of Biden, and I think he was probably a willing accomplice on this. And then they had a wide time between the two conventions. That's never happened before either. So the timeline sort of tells you what their intentions were from the get-go.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So you said you have been in touch with people in third parties, like campaign directors, or how, and are you getting like, or is it mostly just the swing states where people would focus, since that seems to be where it all comes down to? Or
I mean, first off, this operates totally independently of swing state and not swing state. It does work best if the two people doing this are in the same state,
right, okay,
which they would be in most cases if it's people who know and trust each
right, right,
other. And ultimately, the point of this is not in any way to minimize the damage of the third party. It is to literally accelerate the backing for independent candidates so that you get a reflection of what people really believe. And ultimately, it would hopefully completely undermine the notion of swing state and safe state. That is, as more and more people, you know, plan on voting for independent or third party candidates,
Right.
right,
what defines a swing state and a safe state, you know,
would
even
shift,
by
right.
establishment parameters, metrics would be altered.
Yeah, and it neutralizes the thing of, oh, a vote for third party is a vote for Trump, right? That weird math that comes up, because then we take that off the table entirely, right?
Right. It totally takes that off the table because it pairs people up so that they're siphoning off votes from both of the establishment.
Yeah.
Right.
I think what's important is that in the scenario where, the third party candidate doesn't win still, you've basically just lowered the percentage equally on both sides, which elevates the third parties to be more likely to hit 5%, for example, to receive state funding.
Federal funding, yeah.
It does do that, but that's sort of a floor as to what could be accomplished if this starts to take off. The maximum of what could be accomplished is that once you shatter the illusion of inevitability,
Right.
it becomes like a stock bubble,
Yeah.
being burst.
Right.
The illusion of the power and the hold that the establishment has on people, which is the fear of the other side, starts collapsing, and that they realize that they do have someplace else to go, because that's the attitude of the DNC and the RNC.
Right.
Where else are you going to go? Where else
Yeah.
are you going to go? So now this gives,
and it would be a tipping point where then you get debate access. For example, you get on the debate stage and you see how rapidly you could escalate this into something mainstream.
That could happen, although the DNC and the RNC, for whatever reason, have conspired effectively against the Commission on Presidential Debates this year, and so they will likely scuttle any debate possibilities if a third party or candidate has a shot.
The other aspect, though, that you said that I think is also so important is people have removed themselves from their actual convictions and their ideology because they're so concerned about voting against the person they hate most and just voting for their team blue or team red. And this would remind them again why you should vote in the first place. That it could actually reflect your policy hopes and dreams,
Okay. Are you still seeing me? I'm having tech issues on my side.
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. No, yes.
Yeah.
We see you.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets people in touch with their convictions. And it also, it sort of replicates instant runoff voting, but it's almost better than instant runoff voting, where people would rank their choices 1, 2, 3, 4. It's almost better than that because it compels people to work with someone on the other side. And that's part of the goal of the establishment, is to isolate people and to make them hate the other side. And, one side glued to MSNBC and the other side glued to Fox, and just be hating on the other side instead of saying, hold on, we actually agree on these economic policies, and we disagree on these other issues. And we're not going to, be dishonest and say we don't, that we don't disagree on some stuff. We're going to be true to ourselves, but we'll still be able to cooperate, because the establishment does that all the time. They're constantly colluding with each other.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So to answer your prior question, I have been in touch with some of the candidates, and I've been at this for a while, and I see the same reaction from campaigns over and over again. A light bulb will go off, they'll get it, and there'll be no follow through, because they're so tied up with or I don't know why exactly, but they're tied up with getting ballot access, or
Right.
getting a campaign. You're in the eye of the storm, and they don't necessarily get it. So it really is up to the people. This can be a real groundswell if enough people pick up on this. I'd love to know if people are picking up on this. If they start doing pairings and stuff like that, I want to feature that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's wonderful. Well, we will certainly spread the word on that. Votepact.org is the
Thank you.
website. Yeah.
I just have to ask you before you leave,
Sure.
how do you still have press credentials? How do they, with all the hard hitting you do? I'm amazed.
Yeah, I still have press credentials, but they don't call on me.
I noticed that. Yeah.
At the State Department, they will literally, I'll have my
They're
hand
done.
up and they'll go, reporter, 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 skip over Sam, reporter, reporter. And when other reporters holler follow up on a question, they get respected, and they don't respect that from me. So it's a game of how much I'm going to be pushing that envelope. But I actually haven't gone for the last couple of weeks. I'm hoping.
What about the solidarity with the other reporters in the room there? I'm surprised that nobody ever. No.
Yeah, there's a very much a minimum of that, to put it politely. And at times they have their go-to people who they know will cut me off. So even on those occasions where they do call on me, they will immediately. I mean, some reporters, they'll take like 6 follow-ups from. They will have somebody at the ready who they can immediately pivot to cut me off. It sort of happened in that clip that you showed, but
the student protest thing also, I saw that happen like one after another. I think you even put out a video highlighting that they just kept calling on people who were talking about the violence from the student protests, and the just doing the party line there. It's really appalling that those are the Fourth Estate member, that they're in the same group that you are in. It seems unfair that they get to consider themselves journalists.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it so much.
Great. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.